Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in on this cloudy, I guess, Wednesday afternoon. My name is Joey Cathy, and I'm the head organizer here at DCXR and founder and chief experience designer at Capital Interactive, a creative and product development agency that specializes in immersive media. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, let me give you a brief introduction on what DCXR is all about. So we started out in 2014, as many meetup groups do. It's a couple of people who are geeking out about VR, and we just wanted to share that passion with other people. At the time, the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive were still under development, so a large driving force for us at that point was just the anticipation of their arrival. Flash forward to today, where obviously all of these devices are out. DCXR has since become a community of over 2,200 people, designers, developers, filmmakers, and enthusiasts, all with that same passion and that excitement for immersive technology. And while our name has changed from DCVR to DCXR, our mission hasn't. DCXR's goal is to educate the community on the latest trends in XR, highlight how companies are actively using the technology, and to connect XR creators with opportunities in the industry. DCXR members have worked with organizations like Amazon, the US Air Force, Discovery Communications, NASA, and have started startups, arcades, quests, and even game studios. So as we continue on, we'll continue to be a hotspot for local innovation, to facilitate conversations, and to provide opportunities for everyone in the immersive technology industry to flourish. Today, we have a really special event, which we'll get into in just a minute. But first, I'd like to introduce one of our newest co-organizers and longtime DCXR member, Wes Taylor. Wes?
Hey, thanks, Joey. That was beautifully said. It's a great privilege and honor to be part of the DCXR community as a co-organizer. Thinking about, back in 2017, probably one of the first meetups I went to, and just being all inspired by the guests in the community and seeing how this beautiful tight-knit community in DC could come together and really relish in their passion and excitement for the VR and AR industry. And so to have this fully culminating to me, being able to participate and give back to the community, it's really beautiful. So I'm glad and grateful to be a part of this event and co-organizing this event for International Women's History Month. I think it's going to be great to hear from all the guests that we have, Cindy, Sophia, and Aishwarya, and co-hosted by Emma, who's doing fantastic things. I think we met back in 2017, and you put me through the Mercedes-Benz 360 video, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. 360 technology is really a legit way of, displaying a product and immersing yourself inside a car or inside a vehicle, whatever it might be. So it's really awesome. I'm honored to be here. And Emma, please take it away, and love to hear from you and your experience in the VR industry.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Emma, also a DCXR organizer, and I'm the founder of Sunnyside VR. We make immersive experiences for brands and nonprofits, typically in the marketing space, but also some training and education. I know Wesley mentioned the Mercedes-Benz experience that I did before. And yeah, so particularly in the 360 video space, but also doing other things, and have done a little bit of augmented reality as well. So excited to talk about all the different facets of XR, and we have an amazing panel of ladies here today for Women's History Month, and I'm going to have them each introduce themselves. So Cindy, can we start with you?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Cindy Mallory. I'm the Emerging Tech Strategist at Worldwide Tech Services, and I'm also the co-president for the VR AR Association New York chapter.
Awesome. Sophia.
Hi everyone, my name is Sophia Mishasha. I am the vice president of the DC chapter of the VR AR Association, co-host the association's podcast called Everything VR and AR. I just do a lot of other things, which I'm not going to name right now, but it might come up later in the conversation. I like to refer to myself as a professional dot connector. I am an XR strategist, marketing communications, getting basically XR companies business with other industries in the field. So that's
great. Aishwarya.
Hi everyone, my name is Aishwarya. I am currently a student at the University of Maryland. I am studying information science, human-computer interaction, and immersive media. And I am very interested in using XR for social issues such as access to education and community development. And so that's kind of what I'm learning about right now. And I'm really excited to be here today.
Great. So why don't we talk first about what are you working on now and kind of current state of things from your perspective? Sophia, I'll hit you up first.
All right. So I'm consulting for a few companies right now with what I told you guys about before. A lot of consulting, a lot of companies are kind of wondering how they fit in this ecosystem. So I'm helping them understand that and hand qualify leads for them. I'm actually starting a position soon with an organization called AFWorks, which is the Air Force's Center of Innovation. And they focus on all the emerging technologies, including AR and VR and flying cars, which is going to be super cool. So that's what my next venture is going to be. But I'm doing a lot with virtual reality on the side as well. I actually co-lead a group called XR Women. And for all the obvious reasons that we're going to be talking about today. But if you go on xrwomen.com, you can register to be part of our database. We help connect women with opportunities in XR and help propagate them, and get them visibility on sessions like this, so then they can eventually become leaders in this space. So doing a lot there, and then Ready Player Golf is another one of my initiatives. It's the first virtual reality charity golf tournament. We're hosting our second one this September. So if you go on readyplayergolf.com, you can check that out. And then one more thing I'll mention is the WebXR Awards. It's an immersive website, actually. So if you go on WebXRAwards.com, you'll see what WebXR is all about. And we just hosted an award show, the first of the annual award shows that we're going to be hosting. And it was done in WebXR. It was live cast to 5 platforms, social VR platforms at the same time. And then we were also taking feeds from the platforms and streaming it back into the show. So that was a pretty cool effort that I was a part of. And it's just, again, a way to showcase this emerging field of accessing 3D and immersive content on the web, and hopefully initiating more innovation in that space.
Sounds very cool. Cindy.
So the first thing I do is my job with emerging tech strategy. And it's really fun because Worldwide Tech Services is the biggest tech company you've never heard of, because our clients are like Lenovo, Dell. They're the OEMs that come to us. And we, through a series of mergers and acquisitions, after being in 180 countries, now have 500 developers that work on everything. So besides doing industrial AR, I work on integrated tech stacks with IoT, AI, ML. I kind of do solutioning on the client side, where a client will come to us and say, well, we have this tech stack. Can you do predictive analytics and have an AR advisor that helps with step-by-step, sort of diagnoses? And that kind of project, I'm like, yeah, let's go. So emerging tech strategy is fun because you get to stay on top of whatever is the newest. I'm kind of a master of none, but technically proficient enough to be dangerous. I do that for my 9 to 5. And then I'm only involved with the VR AR Association New York chapter, but that has a lot to do with connecting people as well, maybe not to such a great extent, but facilitating a lot of the academia. I do tech transfer with the DoD and Pentagon every year. And one of my biggest things is I do storytelling through data. So I go up on a lot of stages and take really complex sort of technologies or concepts, and I distill it down into something that's understandable. And I think that's like the biggest kind of value I give to the VR industry.
Awesome. Definitely a need for sure, because so many people still don't understand it at all. Aishwarya.
So like I said, I'm a student. So my projects revolve around campus. And so one of the projects that I'm doing currently for my augmented reality class is creating a horror game being able to see like how we can, that's actually one of the only gaming projects I'm doing. Almost everything else has to do with community development, like I was mentioning before. I've painted murals in the past. I'm very passionate about public art and beautifying spaces. And so I have been augmented realitying some of my past murals. I also started working on a project recently about like creating community gardens in augmented reality, being able to nurture spaces that people can come together 6 feet apart, of course. And I also have done research previously for my university. We have a really, really great XR ecosystem right now, which I'm really excited about. And one of the professors was doing research about autism and using virtual reality to kind of reimagine classrooms and see how different students with different learning styles learn differently. And then I did a talk with the University of Maryland a couple weeks ago, which was about my main project. It is basically creating an augmented reality like campus tour experience for new students. I noticed that like a lot of freshmen and transfer students who are coming in this year really didn't have any way of knowing what was on campus. They didn't really have any way of connecting with their fellow students. And they didn't really even get campus tours when they came. So this was more about like learning about the history behind the university, realizing that almost every space that has been around for more than 150 years is a museum. And that means that there's a lot of stories and a lot of experiences that have gone through it. And so that's what I've been focusing on, kind of creating those kind of experiences through storytelling, past, present, and future.
Very cool. So I want to talk about how we all got to where we are, and how other women who might be looking to get into this field can get there. For me, I came from a media production background and specifically got into VR when I was doing media for museums, and that was actually even before VR headsets were a thing. I was shooting 360 video and they were playing it on iPads in the museum. But like even then I was like so excited about this technology, and I bookmarked it and was like, I'm definitely going to do this. And then it was like another 2 years before I started my company because none of the headsets were out and stuff yet. But let's hear about your guys' journey. How did you get into this, and what advice do you have for women? Because obviously too, it's going to be a little bit different for people approaching it now than it was for us, since it was such a new field. It still is obviously a very new field, but it was like so new for some of us. So Aishwarya, let's start with you since you're a student. How did you get into it? What advice would you have for women who want to pursue this?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that like following high school, I think we really have the tendency to put ourselves in boxes and then realizing or like deciding for ourselves that those boxes are immutable. And so just realizing that like XR especially, I think is a tech field that is extremely diverse. You're interested in film, you're interested in audio, you're interested in music, you're interested in art. There are spaces for all of that in just this one field. Personally, I was an artist before coming here. But I grew up in Silicon Valley, so I've been coding since I was 11 years old. And I, both my parents were also software engineers. I really looked up to them and I said, well, I really like your jobs, but how can I make it more me? And so that's kind of where I went on kind of a journey of like, how can I combine these two fields and what does that intersection look like? I think I've learned just a lot in terms of being able to reach out to people like you guys who are already kind of in the space and I love that so many of you are entrepreneurs, because it's like really, it's really pushing this idea of like pioneering your own journey. And I think that's probably my biggest thing. It's just like realizing that you can make your own space in the industry. And that's what I would tell students too.
Awesome. And is there anything, if people want to go study it in college, is there anything they could be doing, while they're in high school or wherever they are in schooling? Do you have any recommendations for like how to get on the path early on?
Yeah. So I would say that obviously coding is a big one if you want to go into development. I started off with the back end, realized that I didn't really like that, which is why I really like C# and Python. And then I would also say like user interface and user experience design, really getting into like the mindset of empathy. Everything is empathy. Designing for users in such a new space means that no matter if you're a developer, you're a musician, anything, you have to understand that you are doing something different. And so you have to pay attention to what your users are doing. I mean, yeah, there's so many ways you can go. I think the space is so diverse. And so just like exploring, reaching out to people who would be good role models for your career path. And yeah, just open yourself to new opportunities.
Awesome. Cindy.
Oh, so I was non-traditional. I had a full ride scholarship studying biochemistry. I was doing enzyme research, and then my scholarship was cut. So I was kind of in a band. I was doing all of these things and then saving up, going back to school for a semester, and then doing a repeat. And then I finally took an internship at a game studio and became CMO of the world's largest VR game studio in 2017, just because I applied the basic principles of math and physics to marketing for virtual reality, which back in 2016, when you have a burn rate of 200,000, a month, it wasn't being done at that scale. Even Bethesda only had 8 people in their VR development team. So to come to a leadership role in a 20-person team where we were all in our 20s, it was like the Wild West. Like we had no clue what we were doing. Our studio was in downtown Manhattan. We were fortunate to have good backers, but we made the IOTA project and had our first IP exit. And with that, there was a stipulation that we had to close. We had to either pivot into commercial work only, which we were bootstrapping with, or we had to close the game studio. So what we did is gave everyone a really nice severance package, and half the people went to Scholastic or other New York, game studios. And I had to make a really hard choice where I chose to actually diversify. Instead of becoming just the VR specialist, I went into blockchain. So for the VR AR Association, I co-founded the chapter, the blockchain committee, and I started working on integrated tech stacks. And that's really where I found my stride, because now I've grown a lot. I've taught, I've actually been an adjunct professor for a German exchange program, because people are blending technologies. You look at the evolution of 5G and cloud computing and how it is parallel with VR. And these things all have to be kind of considered together. Like you do have to take a design thinking philosophy when you approach technology development. So that's where I got to where I am.
Great. I love that. Like very diverse tech background. And we'll talk more about that too when we talk about like the future of this stuff. Sophia.
Yeah, I loved hearing about everything that both of you guys were saying in terms of coming from another profession or another skill sets, and then finding out where that niche is for you specifically in this space, because I think that is what it's all about. I mean, school programs and colleges and professional development programs for AR, VR only just started happening really mainstream a couple years ago. So I think everybody in this space has really created a lane for themselves. And if we think about this as a new medium of communication, there really is a role for every type of skill set and background in this space. And I think that's one hurdle, more of a mental hurdle that particularly women need to overcome. Just because you don't come from a tech background, which I certainly didn't as well, I'm a marketer, does not mean that there isn't a space for you in this industry. In fact, I think that's what this industry needs to make it grow. I love seeing people from these different professional skill sets kind of apply the technology to their professions and to their industries, and it's helping the industries realize the utilization and the importance and the applications of the technology. So for me, I'm based in DC. I started my career in DoD contracting, did that for like 5 years, and then ended up just landing at this company, this tech company that needed some marketing help. I assumed at the time that they did some kind of IT or cybersecurity because they were based in DC and did some work with the government. And I was very pleasantly surprised to find out that they did a lot more than that, including interactive and immersive technology. And from a marketing perspective, kind of having something that's tangible and understanding how it connects with people's mindsets and their brains, and how their thinking works, and that kind of thing, that really attracted me to the technology. And then also learning how it applies to the different industry sectors that we work with, I think was very appealing to me. And so, even though I worked with a company, you heard about all the projects that I'm working on. I mean, these are a lot of like self-initiated, self-led projects, in order to establish myself in the industry, help me grow my expertise in the industry. So I think there's a lot of entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial things that everyone can be doing to grow their presence and their knowledge and expertise in this space.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about where it's going. And you guys all have a lot of overlapping, I guess, technology experience. And it's something where, I'll be talking to people and it's like, to be on the cutting, or to stay on the cutting edge of XR, you need to be keeping up with Internet of Things, with AI, with all of all of those different things. And so, what are you most excited about? Where do you see the technology heading? And what are you most excited about, I guess? Yeah. Cindy, let's start with you.
I was kind of snobby when I first started. I'm like, if it's not a Vive or like the Oculus DK1, it's not real VR. Like I didn't really see how transformative mobile was and how even the Quest was. So I think the thing I'm seeing is as mobile technology becomes closer on par with like the graphics acceleration and the ability to use inside-out tracking, as these mobile, more accessible headsets are able to do things like deep rendering, I'm excited because I think accessibility is really going to drive the field. As much as I think, edge computing, people aren't going to pay for cloud subscriptions so they have a faster mobile PC. That's not realistic. That's not happening in 5 years. But I think like phones getting better and mobile VR getting better, and the kind of content that's available, especially in the not entertainment, but the social good or science or medical fields, I think that's really what I'm excited for.
Very cool. Aishwarya.
This one is a little bit tough for me to answer just because I'm kind of dealing with it myself right now. I'm like, obviously there's so much to do in the industry, like where do I want to go, and like where do I see the most progress? Maybe, I don't know. But I do love that like it is becoming more a part of our daily lives, and people are becoming more interested in like having it just as like a regular people consumer kind of thing. And so I would say I'm just really excited for it to become a regular part of our lives, maybe like being able to use it for everything from groceries to translations to art even. I can't really speak to like the technical aspects as much because again, I'm still learning them. But yeah, I'm really just excited for it to become an extension of our smartphones.
Yeah, it's getting more and more popular by the day, and I'm seeing it in a lot of media, which also excites me. Like even, TV shows, more and more people are popping up with VR headsets on, which is great. Sophia.
Well, from a business perspective, I like that we're getting to a point where all the proof of concepts have kind of been done, and that is establishing this baseline for more of that certainty of going into and investing in this technology. So for the clients that I'm speaking to, it's not, it's not so much pushing the what is XR and what is the value of XR, because now we have things that we can point to, but it's more of it's more of that pull, right? Where these companies and industries now are saying, we want this, help us implement. So we're getting to that turning point where it's just becoming a more popular technology, and the use cases are already out there, and they're showing value, they're showing ROI. So it's not us kind of prodding these companies and these different industries on the value of XR anymore. And then I'll also say, in terms of accessibility, like Cindy mentioned, just because I was so close to this and the awards show that we put on for WebXR, I think that is going to be a huge floodgate opening for accessibility to immersive content, both from the user perspective, because they can access it from their web browser on their mobile device or on their PCs or Macs, but also from accessibility from a developer perspective and a creation perspective as well, because it's just going to open a lot of doors for developers, JavaScript developers in particular, to create on the web without the barriers that we currently have.
Yeah, WebXR is very exciting for sure. So let's talk a little bit more about enterprise, because I know, like Cindy, that's where you are at too. You know, how are you seeing, now that it is being adopted, how are you seeing businesses use this technology, and what are some of maybe like the most successful use cases that you guys have seen? Cindy, can we start with you?
Yeah, so with augmented reality and virtual reality retail, now that everybody's at home, there's been this acceleration of spend by enterprise and brand level companies in this sort of marketing, using it for marketing, finding people who can market through VR and AR. Also, I think especially for large enterprise companies, you have training. They're learning the empathy training, and also just training for things like oil rigs or really expensive part changes in industrial manufacturing or supply chain logistics. You're finding more and more use cases for using either the HoloLens or a completely immersive experience, especially with liability insurance. You would never think of that. That's not a very fun thing to think about. But when companies can save a lot of money because they're able to train people more properly or less expensively, it really starts to accelerate adoption. You get evangelists, like one or two, that end up seeding a pilot, and then that ends up becoming like a full-blown sort of project. And I'm really excited for, just on the enterprise side of things, Microsoft Mesh. They just announced it recently. All that Facebook with Reality Labs is doing, they're really pushing the whole drive for adoption by big business.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the training thing is such a good point. You know, one of the best use cases that I've heard on that front is training firefighters, right? And sometimes there are situations that like they may not happen very often, but you have to be trained for them. And so I think VR and even AR are both really great solutions for that kind of thing. You know, if it's a dangerous situation or something that might not happen very often, I know like doctors are using it, surgeons are using it to like sort of visualize tumors in 3D. There's all sorts of really cool training use cases for it, for sure. Sophia.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Oh, just, you know, what are some like really good use cases at the enterprise level that you're seeing?
So what I really like, what I find intriguing about XR, VR, and AR is in like hard skill procedural training, because of the different metrics that can be captured from the use of VR, in particular VR right now, but eventually AR as well. And everything from understanding where you're looking with your gaze. I mean, there's a lot of metrics that you can pull off of that, to all of the, you know, the BCI interfaces that are happening, understanding like how you're thinking in certain circumstances, how you're moving, how you're reacting. There's something that was done with the police where, you know, there's a shooter, and using spatial audio, they're tracking how the trajectory of sound moves through the space and how the responders are reacting to where the sound is. So those are the types of realistic things combined with abstract things that you can kind of combine to understand more about the user behavior in a training scenario. So things like that excite me, because there's a lot of metrics that you can pull from virtual reality that you wouldn't be able to do in real life.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition to talking about using this technology for social good. And so I know there's a lot of like different empathy kinds of training. I'm actually personally working on a project to try to see if we can increase empathy across political divisions here in the US. I know there's been some racial ones and like other different kinds. And Aishwarya, I know this was an area you're particularly excited about. So do you want to talk about, what excites you about VR and social good, or well, all of the technology and social good and sort of the potential there?
Yeah, I was actually excited about enterprise too, but it's okay.
Oh, sorry, you can talk about that too.
For social good, I think it is, like I said, empathy is at the base of everything. I think like realizing that people, the way that they connect when they are immersed in experiences is very different. And like the fact that they can see it and the way that they can, feel it is very exciting. I actually had a couple of friends a couple years ago who were working on a VR documentary for people who were trying to cross the border. And so they did it in a very documentary style, but like the idea that it's VR, the idea that you can feel like you're part of the group, or that you can feel what it's like to be in other people's shoes is so powerful. And so, yeah, definitely super excited about this. And I think like right now we're doing the audio unit in my immersive media class, realizing that like you can hear so many different, it can spark so many emotions when you're hearing different things and hearing it from, all around you. And so creating all immersive experiences is, yeah, definitely part of social good.
Awesome. Cindy.
So like my introduction professionally to VR was working on games, but luckily down the street from me was the New York Times 360 crew. And one of the things they did that first kind of exposed me to what social good could look like in VR was the cholera outbreak, where they documented that. And after that, I've had meetings with people who used, VR for PTSD treatment. I've seen how you can kind of rewire the brain using VR. You can have people enter a sort of state that you can make them more conducive to feel things that you want them to feel. And in an environment where we're constantly bombarded with things, we kind of grow desensitized. And I think that VR's like tool as like, for brands, but also for public good, is that it can really pull you in. It's truly like, it makes immersion have almost a different meaning.
Yeah, there was a study done by, I want to say a university in Hong Kong, but I could be getting that wrong. And they actually showed in an MRI machine that VR activates like the pain and empathy parts of your brain. And, I come from a documentary perspective too previously. And so like, I'm obviously super excited about this. Sophia, what about you?
So I have some cool examples that I've personally worked on. One is, again, this Ready Player Golf initiative that we started. It's the virtual reality charity golf tournament. And there's a bunch of reasons why we wanted to do this. It stemmed from not wanting to do meetings in Zoom all the time. Zoom conversations are so just like concentrated on a specific subject area, and you need to have some kind of conclusion to the end of the meeting and all of that. And it's not just like it kind of misses that casual encounter type of feel, right? And so we started taking clients into ProPutt by Topgolf. And we started doing client meetings in ProPutt, and it was a lot of the social aspect, networking, and business aspect of it. And so we decided to host this tournament, and have people pay to play, and the funds go to a charitable organization. And in this case, it was Doctors Without Borders, MSF. And in a time where a lot of these charity organizations do a lot of their fundraising in at these in-person events, at auctions and golf fundraisers and things like that. They too were hurting a lot in this pandemic economy. And so we helped them realize a new stream for revenue that they could now reach a global audience to do this. So I think in that sense, that was a cool case study there for social good. And then another thing that I worked on was for a organization called the American College of Preventive Medicine. And they had this initiative called the Social Determinants of Health. And their job is basically to liaison between people in healthcare as well as Congress and lobby on the Hill. And they were trying to get people in Congress to make positive changes on social determinants of health. And what that means is basically have the infrastructure set up in place for healthy living. So for schools, that would be, healthy lunches and not having candy machines on every corner. In your town square, that's having crosswalks and on-ramps for handicapped people. So things like that. And so what we did was we made a tool for them that they could then go lobby on the Hill with, because they only have 30 minutes with congressmen, and to explain to them what the concept of social determinants of health and then why it matters without them having been there is really tough, and to get them to kind of change their mind to create this positive impact. So we basically kiosked an Oculus Go, which basically means you put it on and it opens the application. And then we made a tablet basically to run the application, so somebody could administer what they were watching. So it's easy for somebody that has never been in VR before to get in VR and have it be run by somebody else. And so we made 5 positive and negative scenes, 5 different scenes that had the before positive policy change and then after the changes were made. And it kind of showed, for example, the kids in school, how they just didn't have any energy, and those types of effects that maybe a unhealthy school environment could inhibit, versus if they did have the healthy school lunches and better surroundings and things like that, how that would affect a student in that environment. And then we did that for 5 different scenarios. And so it helped people understand that don't live in these underserved communities, help people understand what these positive changes, what the effects could be on this community's life. So that was really interesting, and that's something that is actively being used on the Hill right now.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I know, like Aishwarya sort of said it, it's like, it's kind of the closest you can get to walking in other people's shoes. And I've heard of experiences where, somebody mentioned autism, actually, like, it's like you kind of feel what the world is like for a person with autism, or, well, yeah, I guess that's just kind of the main example that's popping into my head. But okay, so I feel like we should maybe open it up to questions now. We have about 20 minutes left, and there's like one in the chat and a couple in the Q&A. We'll start with the one in the chat, and particularly too, since Sophia, you mentioned, this celebrity golf, or not celebrity golf tournament, but this golf tournament that was something that like now enabled them to reach a global audience and to still have an income during the pandemic. So the question in the chat was, do you think the pandemic accelerated the interest in VR? And if so, do you see the interest waning post-pandemic? And let's maybe just talk in general about how the pandemic affected XR and that, yeah.
I mean, it definitely I think it's interesting. I think it's 2-pronged, because a lot of the companies in this space are small and new and startups. I think that that kind of put a halt on things for a little bit. And even shut down some companies that were progressing in this space potentially. However, I do think that it in the grand scheme of things, it is accelerating the pace of the adoption of the technology, the interest and the adoption of the technology. Along with things like, the availability for a Quest VR headset for $300 now. And all of these things kind of combined are reducing the barriers to entry there. So I do think that the pandemic has done good things for our industry. It's done personally good things for me because, and I think a lot of other people may have experienced this, but I live in DC, and there really aren't a lot of companies in this area that are doing this type of technology. And so I thought that in order for me to excel in this space, I would have to move to Silicon Valley or New York or LA or something like that. But being the economy that we live in now, and especially the industry that we're in, and these virtual technologies, everything is virtual now. So, I'm literally working with clients that are across the world, and it's provided a lot of opportunity for me, and I'm sure anybody else in this space. You don't have to move to where the companies are located now, and there's so much opportunity for anybody that's looking to get involved in this space. And I will also say that when I started, there weren't a lot of opportunities for like BD people or marketing people, kind of those overhead type of roles, where the owner was doing a lot of that work themselves. But now we're seeing a lot of those types of positions open, and that is a telling sign that this industry is growing.
Yeah. Also, DC is not a bad place to be between like the government and the NGOs here as well. So there's lots of cool use cases for that stuff.
Yeah. On that note, actually, it's been interesting because now, again, not a lot of companies exist in this area, or people that do work in this industry exist in this area, in DC area. And so it's been pretty strategic on my part, because everybody wants to now do work with the government in this field, in this industry, because a lot of the requirements from government are also dropping for immersive technology. So they want people that are connected with contractors and government personnel. So being in DC is not necessarily the worst thing in the world for this technology in this industry. So it's been great.
Yeah, I always like to plug DC. I feel like we're underestimated and underrated quite frequently, but there's actually quite a bit here to do, and with the government, NGOs, but also just even regular companies. And I know DC has a big kind of tech push too, and so they're trying to attract tech companies. So hopefully we'll continue to see that grow. Mm-hmm. Aishwarya, thoughts on the pandemic and this technology?
Yes. Obviously, one of my biggest projects is about the pandemic and like how users are getting acclimated to it. I think like, yes, it has definitely accelerated it just because people are working from home. And so they are looking for ways to maybe like reimagine classrooms, especially reimagine like working from home, being able to like utilize their digital technology more. And so I think like from my project experience, it's been like, it's been all about like understanding how users are going about social interactions, and like how these social interactions are inevitably going to change in the next couple years. And how, I mean, it's mainly about designing for them, right? So like, are you, one of my favorite parts of this user research was definitely finding out how much of a journey almost every single person went on. Just like by being by themselves, by being in an uncomfortable situation, they were like, yeah, we were so much more inclined to try new things. We were so much like looking for different experiences, different opportunities. And so, yeah, I think a lot of AR, VR companies definitely like stepped in at this time and were like, here's a cool thing that you can do with your time. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't really see the interest waning because, there's just so many cool things we can do with it, but also for like people with accessibility issues and stuff like that, I think a lot of us kind of learn what that perspective is like, right? Like people who might not be able to leave their house as much and stuff like that, VR can be a godsend to them. I know actually, you know, back to the social good thing a little bit, there's been VR experiences for elderly people, you know, because they often feel really isolated, or VR experiences for people who like burn victims, where like it's a distraction from the pain and they put them in like a cool environment, things like that. So I think, you know, people might maybe spend a little less time in the headset afterward or once the pandemic is over, but I don't really see it waning at all. Cindy, what about you?
I mean, when I look at it from an enterprise standpoint, one of the biggest interests is in presence, it's in teleportation. It's getting that feeling of having a meeting in person with somebody without being there, because so much of a budget is spent on travel. And now with this hiatus on travel, companies are reinvesting some of that money into alternatives to travel, which include VR. So and also just moving forward, you see many companies moving to a hybrid sort of approach to work, or a more progressive sort of ability to work from home or work remotely or work anywhere. And I feel with that, VR will have growing presence in that, as you see the social VR sort of grow.
Yeah, also, I know I've been talking to a lot of event related organizations, and, you know, I think everybody kind of feels like it will never go back to just 100% in person. Like from here on out, everything can be like hybrid. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for VR in that space too, you know, because yeah, traveling to conferences, not everybody can travel to a conference and take that time. But if they can hop in a VR headset, you know, on their lunch break, then they can still take advantage. And then that's like another revenue stream for these organizations too. So they can, you know, have a global audience instead of just the people who can make it in person. And so I think there's a lot of really exciting potential developments there as well, even once we're going back to mostly in-person events. Okay, let's look at the few. Sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of that, did you guys attend South by Southwest or Sundance at all? Because they had basically fully VR worlds where you could kind of go in and out of like seeing films and seeing experiences. And I think that's when I realized just how this is definitely never waning, because you realize how much money these like events and conferences are saving just by like having an online world where anybody can go anywhere, and you're, you know, like you don't really need to book huge giant event spaces anymore for huge festivals like South by Southwest. So
well, and it stays persistent, right? So the money that they're investing in these events, virtual event spaces, stay persistent for the entire year and beyond, right? So they can use this for other things besides this one event. And then when it comes again time for this event next year, I mean, the space is already built. So there's a lot of cost savings that that the event producers will realize, amortized obviously, but lots of opportunity for this to be your virtual presence now beyond just that one-time event.
Yeah. Okay, so for a question from Erin, any ways you see the role of XR contributing to skills, reskilling or upskilling for jobs in the future, maybe even jobs that don't exist yet, or possibly in industries that don't exist yet? Cindy, let's start with you, since you're like, that's pretty much one of your focuses, I think.
I mean, I made my title, I made my career, and it was because I found a very, very specific like niche area to go into, which is hyper focusing on how new tech intersects and how business problems can be solved with that. So I definitely think that it's one of the things that distinguishes me when I apply to speak at different conferences. Like I spoke at South by Southwest because I was speaking on not just VR, not just blockchain, but the intersection of virtual currency in a virtual world. So I definitely think that it makes you, and also VR is cool, XR is cool. Like it makes you stand out. It makes you be part of a community that is super passionate. And just how I kind of felt about gamer culture before I discovered VR, it kind of applies to that, I think. I think that developing your skills in any aspect, whether it be world building with, you know, graphic models or actual engineering, or the business development side of things, the marketing side. If you can kind of take that passion you have and focus it with VR, like I think it sets you aside, it puts you apart from other people in the pool.
Yeah, Aishwarya.
I think a lot of reskilling is just going to come from training and like training modules and being able to like have people actually imitate or simulate the jobs that they're going to be reskilling for. Again, not really an enterprise person. I don't know how much I can say about this, but definitely education and training is a huge one.
Yeah, well, and I mean, at the even just younger student level, there's some really cool applications for both AR and VR. And I know there's organizations really trying to push to get this technology in the schools because, it can teach students things in a new way. They can like play with a 3D model of a molecule, or they can practice their public speaking in front of an audience, or they could do virtual field trips all around the world and meet people from other cultures. So there's a lot of awesome, even for students, use cases, I think. But Sophia, what about you? What do you think in terms of like skills and jobs for the future with this technology?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can take that question, but training and learning is the biggest use case across the board, because you are, I mean, you're basically recreating real life or not, and building muscle memory experientially. So that can be applied in a multitude of ways. And I know that the DoD in particular is interested in being able to deliver training at the point of need, and these kind of just easily digestible modules, right? So you're not going through a month of training and then you never touch some of it until years down the road. You're going to be able to access this training, this contextualized training at the point of need, at your own pace, those types of things, where it's going to be really useful, and kind of reskilling, upskilling, all of those things at the point of need. And then there's going to be a lot of jobs that haven't even been invented yet. I know, like for volumetric capture, for example, there's, I forget what the term is, but you're like a designer or a, the people that that do hair and makeup and dressing for the talent and actors that are going to be volumetric captured, which is basically a 360-degree capture of a person, object, or potentially an environment. But there's a specific way that that talent needs to be set up and dressed and all of those things for an effective capture. So there's a lot of different job roles that will open up with this, virtual concierge and things like that, checking into places and help desk stuff and all those live things. So lots of cool opportunities there.
Yeah, I think I'm particularly excited about the volumetric capture stuff. It's coming from, the media production side. Okay, let's look at the Q&A from Jesse. Basically, for those who come from lower digital literacy backgrounds and may have less access to commercialized VR products like headsets, or maybe less inclined with these products due to general needs around technology, how can we supplement these products with clear details on how people from all backgrounds can use and benefit from these systems? And Sophia, I'll start with you, particularly with your WebXR or WebVR focus.
How can we supplement these products with clear details on how people from all backgrounds can use and benefit from these systems? Okay, well, I would check out the W3C, first of all, Worldwide Web Community Group, specifically the community group that's working on WebXR and immersive content. And there is something called the WebXR device API that they're working on right now, which is basically a standardization guideline of how everything is going to work and play together in WebXR, so they can kind of, so we're not going to have to recreate for every web browser and those types of things. So I would check that out, and that'll give you a good idea of where WebXR is at now and kind of what they're working on and where it's headed, and it'll give you a lot of resources as well to learn more about how to utilize the tech.
Okay, Cindy, any thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I think along the lines of what Sophia said, technical documentation is free. It's up on the internet and it's highly available, and it really helps you understand things before you even have, or even if you don't have access to the actual software. Like for instance, you can read the technical documentation for hardware as well with like the Oculus or the Microsoft HoloLens and understand how it works a little bit better. You can download game engines to use for free and then use the technical documentation to understand spatial creation without having to spend any money. There are ways to become very technically proficient without even putting on a headset.
Mhm. Unity Learn, actually, Unity has a good resource called Unity Learn, and it's basically a self-paced guided instruction, like 101 on how to develop for Unity, and it's free on their website.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great resources out there. Aishwarya, did you want to comment on this at all?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this question, Jesse, because I think accessibility is so important. And as a designer, I obviously love this question. When I was doing autism research, I think one of the biggest things that it was a lot about designing tailored experiences for different accessibility groups, right? So for this particular group, it was more about like not overwhelming, or like how it is paced, how they are being taught concepts, what like what even they're being taught, what their strengths are playing to that, and realizing that like disabilities are never disadvantageous. They're just in fact, they can be really advantageous. I noticed like during education in autism, because they are really good at paying attention to details, and like how do we make sure they don't get overwhelmed by those details, and then obviously from like a general typography or colors perspective, I think I've never done a lot of that, but it is definitely in my plan to. I think it'll just have a lot to do with like user research and prototyping, and like trying to figure out how users respond to different, maybe serifs are really annoying in VR, you know, like we just, I don't know particularly, but I'm sure there's a lot of, I would like to get involved in that soon.
Great. And then, so actually speaking of like design, somebody put a question: would you hire designers who do not code? If so, what does a strong no code XR designer candidate look like to you? Aishwarya, why don't we just start with you, since you were kind of talking about design anyway?
Yeah, this is a question that I've kind of been throwing around as well. Just like I do have that coding experience, but I definitely identify more as an artist. I think the answer that I've gotten most commonly is like 3D artists. If you have good modeling skills, and if you have, and if you're like modeling is paying good attention to detail, accessibility, all of that, then people really like that, because I think there is definitely an influx of developers in this industry more than there's artists. And so we're definitely valued. You know, we like when we do come around, people are like, how much can you do? Can you do everything? And you're like, well, maybe. Learning how to say no, right?
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to being non-techie, I also mentioned so many other industries like film. I know, Emma, you can probably even speak to documentaries and like media, music, audio. None of that is technically technical in like a coding sense, but there are really, really, really cool things going on there.
Yeah, and I think, you know, user experience is so important, and we're still like figuring that all out in VR. And so I think that, you know, coders might not necessarily be taking that into account all the time. And so having somebody who's not a coder who can then like test it and see what that user experience is, I certainly could see that being a role. Cindy, thoughts?
As a huge fan of what you see is what you get editing, I think that just having a strong portfolio means more. If you work with a big enough team, you have specialists. Like, I'm not the person building AI models. I'm talking to the clients. So there definitely is a place, I think, in the right sort of team. If you're looking at smaller teams, you'll need a technical founder that can integrate your assets. Or even if you switch from using, instead of Unity, you learn Unreal, they have a lot of they have something called Blueprints, which is a framework for designers to build models. There are definitely ways around it, but absolutely, I don't think it should be a deterrent. You should just build your portfolio to show your strengths.
Sophia, any thoughts?
I just piggyback on what the other two ladies said, and you, Emma. I completely agree. I mean, it's about building your portfolio. You know, you don't have to do that through professional experience. You can do that on your own. And in fact, I know a lot of people that we hired on both the designer and developer side were self-taught on YouTube and on other places. You know, there obviously wasn't, you know, there wasn't a program in college for these things prior to a few years ago. So anything that you want to learn is available online. And I know that, you know, whereas some more traditional corporate companies, you know, want some of that more traditional type of experience, this industry will take what they can get because we're all growing and learning together, and that's the way that you enhance your skill set and your experience.
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time to get to every question, but I just want to wrap up by talking about resources, right? Like, how can people who might be wanting to get into this or even just learn more, you know, what are some of your favorite resources for people looking to get into this kind of stuff? Sophia, why don't we start with you since you went last?
Resources. Well, first, I want to invite anybody, specifically the women, but anybody's invited to the XR Women on our Wednesday meetings that we have in the iLearn Verbella campus. It's a 3D platform. You can access it through your PC or a VR headset, tethered VR headset, which is with the cable. We meet Wednesdays from 11:30 a.m. Eastern to 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And we have everything from self-care to presentations on more of the professional things that are going on in the industry. But we have a great community of women, and we can continue these conversations where everybody's kind of learning how to grow themselves and wanting to collaborate and connect with one another and help each other. So it's a great, relaxed, casual place where anybody can come in, whether you're new or experienced, and get help there. So I would say that's number one. You can go on xrwoman.com to check that out. And then resources, I mean, WebXR API, a device API is a good technical document on where WebXR is going in terms of for those that are concerned about accessibility. Unity Learn, I know Wes posted a couple of links on Unreal and Unity and courses there. There's a lot of courses that are XR Bootcamp. If you want to learn very specific, learn how to do very specific things and develop very specific things with XR and VR. XR Bootcamp is available. There's so many meetups like this that are happening that is just a wealth of information. So definitely attend the DCXR meetups, check out the VR AR Association. I would say that's more, the association is more of more of a professionals type of group, but they have a lot of resources there as well. A lot of workshops coming up. I'm working on a WebXR developer workshop coming up in May, so it's going to be very technically focused. So connect with me on LinkedIn or wherever else you can find me. Yeah, there's a lot out there, so just do your research. Yeah.
Cindy.
Well, that was very thorough. I think I'd want to add to that, like Microsoft documentation. So docs.microsoft have a lot of stuff on the AR, especially the HoloLens, if you're interested in that. Just Googling things on the internet is how I got to everything in my career. And I also think one of the things that really helps me learn on a daily basis is the fact that, like, for instance, I've never met Sophia before, but we were connected on LinkedIn, probably because I bothered her and I'm like, she's cool, I need to follow her. And I have a wealth of information and a bunch of projects that people post because I follow so many great people in the XR space on LinkedIn. So you can kind of build your own treasure trove of like learning information from people who you admire in the space.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Aishwarya.
I can obviously come at this from a little bit of a student perspective. I kind of just missed the boat of people who can take this major. And so far I've only been able to take one class, but just realizing that there are so many professors who are working towards something like this, who are amazing research going on at the university, right? And I think I'm very, very lucky that I go to the University of Maryland, where there is such a emphasis placed on it. And so I think reaching out to professors, reaching out to industry professionals, like I said, I can't even explain to you how much this has helped me. Just like after I went to Sundance, I was like, this was the coolest thing I've ever seen. How did you do that? And people will actually respond to you because this is such a new space and people really want to help each other. And so I think that was like my biggest like aha moment. Like, yes, people are willing to help me. I just have to ask. And then also Reddit, like Reddit is a huge one. Just like, I really had to learn everything pretty much myself, but like for VR and AR, and like meetup groups, I think people have already mentioned that. That was a big one. Just LinkedIn groups, people already mentioned that, but these two are like really, really big for me. So
yeah, and I do really love how collaborative the space is right now. I don't know if it will always stay that way, but it really is a great time to get in because people just want to help each other. We're few and far between, so people are usually happy to be a resource for other people. I would also just throw out, like, I use Twitter where I just follow a bunch of VR news accounts even, and it can be just a great way to kind of like quick scroll through and see like what are the latest updates, what's trending right now in the industry, and just kind of a quick little cheat, I guess, to like quick catch up on what the newest stuff is. Okay, so I think that's all we have time for today. Unfortunately, I know there's still some questions unanswered, but please do connect with these lovely ladies on LinkedIn, and we hope to see you at the next meetup. Joey, did you want to say anything before we go? Or Wesley?
Hey, no, thank you guys so much for joining. Emma, thank you for moderating. Aishwarya, Cynthia, Sophia, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate all of your insight, and looking forward to connecting with you guys later on.
Yeah, I also want to echo that. It's amazing to have you all here on this panel. It's super inspiring. I think we have some guest attendees who are also inspired. And that's the goal for DCXR going in the future, being more inclusive, inspiring people, and really celebrating this amazing technology. And there's so many different outlets from enterprise to entertainment. We're seeing many different avenues for success, and I'm really happy to be a part of it and be amongst you all. So thank you.
Bye, everybody.